Yeah, yeah. Yeah, shark in the gun, got the knowledge for the college. Football show breaks down the odds of scholars. 3-unit bangers, stacking cheddar like flowers. Ride the wave, the fame flex in the midnight hours. 9 words of lifestyle, spitting flames, no pity. Dominate the board like kings, ruling the city. Sports, gambling, hustle, money moves so gritty. Cashing tickets every Friday, life looking pretty. Ride the wave, feel the rush, hit your dame. Shark in the gun, setting fire to the name. 3-unit banging, stacking chips, no shame. Friday night sports kings claiming that fame. Analyze stats, break bread, no sweat. 3-point spreads, risk life, major bet. Cash in pockets, feel.
On a suddenly not so casual free Friday, it is CFB Knowledge for College Week 1 edition. Friday, August 30th, 2024. The Shark and the Gun. We are back. We are hyped to commence a full card in Week 1. Guts Picks, what's going on, brother?
Man, we had the appetizer in Week 0, and we cashed a ticket with the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. But we are back with the full course. We're talking steak. We're talking lobster. We're talking a little bit of the mashed potatoes on the side. We get full-blown college football into our veins. And we can't wait to do it. Saturday, college football Week 1. Let's go.
Not waiting around. Tomorrow, the 31st, the last of the month. My first official play, high noon in Morgantown. I will say this, the notorious Morgantown taking the West Virginia at plus 8.5, 1 unit, and really going through it. Earlier today, I saw Pat McAfee was actually on site in Morgantown. And you know that guy's the biggest hype man in sports media right now. And truly, that is the moment we are waiting for at high noon. And you really go through what I was watching on that broadcast. And I rarely do this. I usually go numbers, but I was feeling a massive energy as I was watching senior quarterback Garrett Green get interviewed. He says they're all bought in, and he says he's a Johnny Manziel disciple. And it really kind of dated, I think, all of us when you saw a senior in college basically coining Johnny Manziel as an elder statesman. But here we are in 2024. And going back to last year, West Virginia really did exhibit a great efficiency at home. Not a good road team, 2-4 ATS on the road, minus 7.5 points per game. But in Morgantown, 5-1 ATS, plus 15.3 points per game. And you really go back to last year in the opener. This is the second time these teams have played back-to-back. They hadn't played before since 1992. But Penn State did hammer West Virginia in the opener last year in Pennsylvania, in Happy Valley, 38-15. So you get that motivation all through camp for head coach Neil Brown to really get these guys going. And the revenge is there. The line is there. Last year was minus 20.5 at home, a real strong figure. This opening up at minus 10, that is short. And of course, Sharp Steam coming in on this all week. Have this graded Penn State to win by the most 3 points. I was looking at a couple other databases. It seems like this game will be a field goal game either way. Top play on the early card and final point on this. Last year, Penn State 4-1 ATS on the road in conference, 0-1 out of conference. That was a bowl game. The last game they played against Ole Miss, the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, a blowout by Ole Miss. 38-25. Think this will be a tight one. First official play for me on this broadcast. West Virginia plus 8.5. Guns Picks. I know you have a second hat in your arsenal over there. The fade hat, the sell hat. I think a lot of people are not going to love this play, but we love contrarian angles to open up the broadcast. 2 o'clock in Stillwater. The Gun taking South Dakota State at plus 9.5.
Yeah, he talks about this. So we have South Dakota State versus Oklahoma State. Boone Pickett Stadium's here in Stillwater, Oklahoma. When we look at this matchup, we have Oklahoma State, and I'm very high on Oklahoma State overall in the season. They're number one in overall in experience, coming back 19 returning starters, including Ollie Gordon, who's hopefully going to be sitting as a finalist in the Heisman Trophy as a Heisman Trophy candidate in New York at the end of the season. But we will have to see on this one. But I'm a little bit hesitant to be taking this team early on in the season. I'll tell you why. Listen, they're playing a South Dakota State team that is off a FCS national title. On the offensive side of the ball for them, they get their quarterback, a highly touted quarterback in Gronkowski back under center. They have 2 elite running backs in Angel and Amar Johnson. I don't think they're brothers either, just coincidence on the last name there. And also on the defensive side, 9 out of 15 returning starters on as far as their top tacklers are concerned on the defensive side of the ball. And this year, they are ranked preseason number 1 in the FCS. So this is why I believe the line is short on this one. Last season, you got to look at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State struggled on the defensive side of the ball. They allowed their opponents to get 4.6 yards per carry on the ground, 275 passing yards to their opponents. And then they're going against the San Diego State team that has a great offense, especially running the ball. 6.1 yards per carry last season, 222 yards passing yards per game. And their offensive line only allowed 3.2% sack rate in 2023. And they're getting 4 out of 5 guys back on that offensive line that made them successful last season. Also, let's take a little bit of a sample size of how Oklahoma State performs in week 1. They are before I get into that, 1-3 ATS last season as the home favorite. All right. But let's look at week 1 of how they perform at home. And I'm going to break this down. 2023, they went OSU was a 27 point favorite versus Central Arkansas. They only won by 14. Did not cover that game. 2022, Oklahoma State was a 21 point favorite versus Central Michigan, the MAC. Only won by 14. 2021, Oklahoma State was a 38 point favorite against an FCS opponent in Missouri State, only won by 7 points. And then 2020, they were a 23 point favorite versus Tulsa, only won by 11. So 4 straight years, they have not covered the spread versus inferior opponents in week 1. And there might be a little bit of a look ahead if you want to look at a half sandwich action, as they say, because they have Arkansas next week and SEC non-conference matchup at home next week. So while I love Notre Dame, the sell hat is engaged because I am not buying here. I am selling on the Cowboys, unfortunately. While I like them in the full season, I did take their over on wins. I think they're capable of winning the Big 12. This game is going to give them hiccups, but don't fret. This team will do well in conference. So give me South Dakota State plus 9.5, 2-unit special.
Beautiful print, fitting like a glove for a sell hat. I mean, this is a little convenient here, but that hat fits fantastically. And we do like the road team there to keep it close. As Guns mentioned, Oklahoma State not performing well out of conference early season. And this is just symptomatic to these teams playing out of conference. Oftentimes it's like the preseason in the NFL. They don't get preseason in college. So week 1 out of conference, highly uninspired spot against South Dakota State. The gun on it at plus 9.5. Speaking of uninspiring matchups for any sort of entertainment quotient, my next official, we're going to Massachusetts, 3:30 p.m., and backing UMass on the money line. That was 120 all week. It's 2.5 ATS now. That's also fine. Or if you guys want to pay, I believe 150 for the money line. Steam coming on that. And I think highly noteworthy steam when you see Sharps pounding one of the worst teams in FBS football over the last decade plus. But staying the course with this conversation, I have written down here, Battle of the Bottom Feeders. Eastern Michigan is not anything to write home about themselves. Eastern Michigan cleaning up, if you will, the MAC last year against the spread, 5-3 ATS. But for those of you guys who know college football, the MAC is one of, if not the softest conferences in FBS America. And if you go outside of conference last year in their first 4 games, Eastern Michigan was 1-3 ATS. Their only cover came by a hook at Minnesota, 25-6 on a plus 19.5 in week 2. And in those 4 out-of-conference games, EMU was outgained emphatically, 1,663 yards to only 960 yards. They really can't move the ball at all. And something that I was really trying to find when I looked at this card, with a lot of matchups being out of conference and a lot of matchups not having prerequisite data from previous seasons, was spots like this, because this is the 4th year in a row that UMass is playing against Eastern Michigan. We're not entirely sure why, but they are. And EMU has won all 3 of those matchups. So you get a triple revenge game. You get a ton of motivation. You get the home opener, and you get a matchup that is really tightening up. If you go back to 2021, EMU did hammer UMass on the road in Massachusetts 42-28. But the last 2 years, both played in Michigan. EMU 20, UMass 13. UMass was up 13-0 in that game before EMU backdoored to win. Non-cover, though, 19.5 points UMass was getting. And then last year, September 16th, 2023, EMU 19, UMass 17. So the gap is closing. The line was shorter, only EMU minus 7.5. So the books had a grip. Books were telling us 19.5, 7.5. And now you get UMass favored for the first time in this matchup within this last 4-year window. This is incredibly strong for the home team. I think they get off this schneid, and they're getting their starting quarterback back. He's another legendary name in this campaign. Something Fomanik, I believe. Don't get us started with these quarterback last names here in 2024. But let the line tell you the story. Triple revenge, motivation, and the matchup scaling intensely towards a UMass outright win. On the money line, expecting a 5.5 to 10-point victory tomorrow afternoon in Amherst. UMass minus 120, 1 unit. Guns picks on this broadcast dating back 4 years. Loves late night football and loves the late night special. And we are going 10:30 p.m. National, Arizona, and the GOAT, per myself and Guns last year, Noah Fafita, campaign 2, minus 29.5 against the University of New Mexico. Guns picks, unofficial.
Yeah, I mean, they're back, but a little bit of changes on not only the coaching staff, but the personnel, but the core still remains. Let's talk about this matchup here. Arizona coming this season, 84th in experience, 15 returning starters. On the offensive side of the ball, a brunt of their running back and wide receiver core left, go to the transfer portal. However, the core still remains, and I'm talking about the legend, the GOAT, as Shark alluded to, Noah Fafita. We made a lot of money on this guy last season. We will continue to do so. And also, they keep their top receiver in McMillan. He had 1,400 receiving yards last season. 4 out of their 5 starters on the offensive line are back. So the core is back. And what I mean by that, you got the quarterback, you have the offensive line, and you have your top scoring threat coming back in the office. Now, Jed Fish, the coach for Arizona, has moved on, gone to Washington. So they get Brent Brennan. He comes over from San Jose State. He's the biggest turd polisher in maybe the nation when it comes to building a team from nothing and building them into something. He went to San Jose State when they were garbage and couldn't win a game, made them a back-to-back bowl team in the last 2 seasons, and also in 2020 got them a Mountain West championship. So I think even with Jed Fish gone, there shouldn't be much of a drop-off in the coaching, because Brent Brennan is going to have the best core of talent that he's ever had as a coach. Also, you got to look at UNM. On the other side, they're coming off their first loss of the season versus Montana State, 35-31. 21 unanswered points in the fourth quarter is the reason why they lost. They had a huge lead against this FCS top 5 opponent. I'm talking about from the FCS standpoint, and they lost the game because they couldn't stop the run. Like I said, their defense was a liability. They can't stop the run. 5.3 yards per carry to their opponents last season. I did allude to that last time we did the week 0 episode. But what did they do against UNM? Montana State had 362 yards rushing, 7.7 yards per carry. So this defense did not improve. They got worse, and they did it versus an FCS opponent. So if you think that UNM is back because they had a lead on an FCS opponent, they're not. They're a bad team, maybe worse than they were last season. Also, you got to look at Arizona. 73 ATS versus non-conference opponents the last 3 seasons. You look at UNM, 14-23-1 ATS since 2014 versus non-conference opponents. 4-15-1 as a double-digit dog. So this is not a play-on team. This is a must-fade team, especially knowing that Bronco Mendenhall has his hands full with this Lobo team, going up against an Arizona team that, while people think they're going to drop, not quite yet, especially in week one. We're going to be riding this Arizona team in week one, and I don't care how big the number is. Arizona minus 30.5 is the number that I got. I know there's 29s and 29.5s out there. I don't care about the drop in the number. This team's going to win by 40. Arizona minus 30.5, minus actually 1.5 unit special.
Yeah, and I think go back to last night. Obviously, week one opening up with a significant amount of games last night on the 29th. But there were a ton of games like this last night with a lot of FCS teams playing. Of course, UNM is not an FCS team, but for the sake of this conversation, we have them weighted in a very similar context. And you look at the lines last night. These were all bloated lines, 28s, 30s, 35s, 40s, 42s. I don't have the exact information right in front of me, but they were
I do.
all blowout. What was the ATS efficiency of
the best? So I didn't mean to interrupt you, Chuck. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
I wanted to bring the stat up to people. So if you have it, and I can't remember who I can credit for this one, but there is a statistic about heavy home favorites in week one of 30 points or more, and it is a 62% hit rate that these teams not only win but cover in a massive rate. So don't be scared of these big numbers early on. There's a reason why they're big, and we have a situation here with Arizona, and that's why we're taking it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is just your classic line reading environment where don't be afraid of the big number. It's the sports books telling you there is situational strength. And as I mentioned last night, there were blowouts across the board, which was actually a bit of a regression from week 0, where the underdogs were actually 4-0 ATS in week 0, which was totally outlierish and due to come the other direction. My next play, I want to give a shout out to the chat picks from Dave in the house, our guy, Wacky Wizard. What's up, brother? Jose Sierra and others. Peter Gracia says he lives right down the street from Amherst. Let's go, UMass. Of course, pun picks in the house and all the top dogs. My final play, big time football, 7:30 p.m. out of conference, top 25 special, taking Texas A&M at minus 2.5 for 1 unit. There's a lot going on in this game. ABC National game day will be there tomorrow. And I think when I opened up the conversation in my first take regarding Morgantown with McAfee and company there, it speaks to the immensity of that moment. This is potentially the biggest game for Texas A&M since Alabama last year. And the major talking point here as we open is the coaching change for A&M. Jimbo Fisher, I believe, just had the biggest buyout in college football history, something like $75 million just to go sit on his couch. What a life that is. But Jimbo's gone. Enter Mike Elko. And I think if you really look at Elko situationally and psychologically, it really couldn't get any better for a coach coaching in his first game. Elko was the Notre Dame defensive coordinator back in 2017. So he has a revenge element from that standpoint. He was also the defensive coordinator for Texas A&M from 2018 to 2021. So now he returns to where he was clearly very comfortable coaching in College Station. Not only that, Sam Hartman has graduated and now is playing for the Commanders. The quarterback situation for Notre Dame is also incredibly advantageous for Elko, as it's Riley Leonard, his old quarterback at Duke, quarterbacking Notre Dame. And when you look at an environment like that, that always leans towards the coach from an advantage standpoint. The coach knows the player. The coach is a defensive coach. He will know what scheme to write up for this specific matchup against Riley Leonard. And speaking of the Jimbo era, mired by mediocrity to a degree versus huge expectations, but I think there was a noticeable polarization, particularly last year. A&M struggled mightily on the road last year. They were very good in College Station, going 4-1 ATS at home as a favorite against FBS competition last year. And that would be what this environment is, home favorite versus FBS. And you go to Notre Dame last year, of course, as I mentioned, there's a quarterback change, but it's still the same coaching staff and it's still the same program. Last year, Notre Dame struggled in one very specific environment, on the road versus big-time opponents. They had 3 games last year that I think you can correlate to tomorrow's game. At Duke, on September 30th. Notre Dame won the game 21-14 and did cover the spread -5.5, but Duke was in control of that game. And there was a 4th and 16 conversion for Notre Dame on the final drive at midfield inside of a minute. So without that absurd conversion, Duke wins. They stayed on the road the following week at Louisville and got hammered 33-20 as a small favorite on the road. And then later on November 4th at Clemson, another margin loss, down significantly in the second half, made it a little bit tighter late. Clemson 31-23. And speaking of being a favorite or a dog on the road, Notre Dame was actually favored in all of their road games last year. 5 road games, 5 as a favorite. This is the first time they've been a road underdog since the final regular season game in 2022. And that was a margin loss at USC. USC with Caleb Williams -3.5, 38-27. USC was up 10-17 points the entire second half and in full control. This is Mike Elko, day one. This is a spot to stand up for Texas A&M. It's a primetime game. Game day's there. College Station, one of the best home atmospheres in college football. Buy low on all accounts. Buy Texas A&M at -2.5. Going to throw it to the gun. Guns is one of the biggest Notre Dame fans I know. Guns, give us a little home team take here from the Notre Dame fan base.
I'm a big Notre Dame fan, but I'm unbiased. All right. So I understand the cap. The cap makes perfect sense. You have a lower ranked team going against a higher ranked team. You're playing at home and you're the favorite. It's an automatic. You always take the other side. And then when you look at Notre Dame's side, their offensive line, while was complete before the start of spring practice, actually before they reported to camp, now the left tackle is hurt, so they have to replace them. They have depth on the offensive line, but there is concerns there. And then Riley Leonard coming off his second ankle injury. A second surgery off his ankle injury. I don't know how healthy is. Is he 100%? So there is concerns there. The running back quorum is going to be good. The wide receiver quorum is the best it's ever been. The defense is at par to what they were last year. And I think on the other side for Texas A&M, they have a great defense. They're going to really push that line and pressure Riley Leonard. It's a volatile environment for them. I would also allude to the fact, if you're doing devil's advocate, you look at the Notre Dame side there. Freeman, 4-1 ATS as a dog since he's been the coach there. So there is an element there that as a dog, they may be a little bit hungry, and knowing that they're getting disrespected, a little motivational factor there. So I can see both sides there. I think it's going to be a battle here, but I think Sharks cap makes sense from a narrative standpoint and from a numerical standpoint. I can't argue with it. I'm going to cheer for my guys. I'm not going to bet on this game. I'm going to say go fucking Irish. I hope you lose your bet, Shark.
And, speaking of Notre Dame covering as a road underdog, go back 2 seasons ago. I remember they opened up at Ohio State, and they did cover the spread. They lost 21-10. And the key point on that, though, I think, which is a significant difference from tomorrow's game, getting 16.5 points in that game. So they didn't play particularly well. They only scored 10 points. Ohio State, that was back C.J. Stroud's final season up there with Marvin Harrison Jr. and a couple of their other elite wide receivers. Ohio State outgained them in that game almost 2-1 and just didn't put points on the board. So if you talk about an efficiency covering these spots, Guns would say this just as much as I would, and has said this on the show for 4 years now. You got to go to the box score and see, were they really that good, or was the other team a bit outlierish in their ability to score, where they were really actually quite dominant in that game? So I think, if anything, this is more of a regressible statistic to more of a 50-50 or slightly below average, particularly when you're covering 80% of these spots. As I mentioned, I believe the only non-cover in the last couple seasons as a road underdog was the game I mentioned 2 years ago against Caleb Williams on the road and USC. So love this spot. Will be a huge game. Hype for it. Guns is my guy. He loves Notre Dame. Texas
I'm going to throw up. I'm going to throw up.
Dominate.
It's going to be a horrible evening. I just feel it.
And,
all right, I got it. Let's go to the next play.
And just scrolling up in the chat, a couple guys, Wine Time Sports. What's up, brother? Hope you're having a beautiful Cabernet Sauvignon on this beautiful Friday night. Sam Chepal. I know you don't pronounce it like that, but I love the French pronunciation. And of course, Beavis Rogers picks from Beavis says, capacity crowd here for the show. Let's turn the heat up and get bug wild. No doubt. A beautiful Friday evening it is. Speaking of evenings and late night plays, tomorrow night Guns Picks going late night again, 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 out in Arizona. Final official of the broadcast from the Gun, Wyoming +7. What's going on here?
Anybody that follows me or has followed me for a while at Gunspicks on all social media platforms know I eat, sleep, and breathe late night degenerate specials. And we got another one here with Wyoming versus Arizona State. Mountain America Stadium, Tempe, Arizona is the spot. We have a Wyoming team, 70th in experience, coming back on both sides. 13 returning starters. They do lose their starting quarterback, but guess what? I am going to mess up this name knowing I'm going to have to say Slivota. There we go. I said it in Russian. This guy got some playing time, but when he got into the game, he played very well. Bowl game win. He was a catalyst for his old coach that went into retirement after that win at the Arizona Bowl. And then he played against Texas, one of the teams that made the college football playoff in 2023, and played very well with them. So don't sleep on this quarterback for Wyoming. So Wyoming also brings back their top wide receivers, 4 out of 5 of their starters from the offensive line, and will implement a new offense that will allow more scoring. So they went and got a new offensive coordinator, knowing that, and actually they hired within to go get the head coach. And so the team mentality, the team dynamic will stay the same, but the offense is going to be more open. You know, Wyoming was a little bit more conservative under the old coach. Now they're going to kind of open things up in the passing game and be a little bit more balanced, especially with a new quarterback under center. Wyoming on the defensive side, 7 returning starters, 6 out of 7 were top tacklers for them. So there shouldn't be any drop off on the defensive side. When you look at Arizona State, they're in full rebuild mode. Granted, they have the 68th most experienced team in the country. On the offensive side, they do return their top running back, but they're going with a new starting quarterback because my old quarterback left the program, and he is probably bagging groceries at a Safeway and somewhere in Podunk, Indiana. New wide receiver core on that one, and a new entire offensive line. Now, when you know what about offensive lines, to develop an offensive line, it doesn't take months. It doesn't take weeks. It takes almost a year or two to get those guys to gel as a unit, especially when you're dealing with a team that is not at the high level of an Alabama or Georgia. We're talking about Arizona State here. The defense is going to be weak on the defensive line as well. And they had to add a bunch of voids on that defensive side too. A lot of transfers coming in. And we saw it last night with Colorado. And I emphasize the fact that at least in week 1, we need to fade these teams that are taking a lot of transfers in immediately, because they have no time to understand each other's roles in the game, especially when you're dealing with a lot of these teams that don't have exceptional coaching to guide them and mold them into not just players, but team. All right. Also, got to look at Wyoming. Wyoming has performed well versus non-conference opponents in the past. 4-4 straight up, 6-2 ATS on the road. And then you go to Arizona State, 1-9 ATS versus non-conference opponents last 3 seasons, 0-5 ATS at home versus non-conference opponents. And then we just basically have an Arizona State team that is still on the downgrade, still on the rebuild. They underperform as a favorite, especially versus non-conference opponents. And historically with Wyoming, they just perform well in these type of situations, especially playing as short dogs on this one. I think there's time to play Arizona State, but I think we should wait till conference play when these overinflated lines go against this Arizona State team, where we can take advantage of this team and make some money. But we're not going to do it here, especially with Arizona State as a favorite. So I'm going to be taking Wyoming here at +7, -108, 2-unit special.
Absolutely. 6 top plays here on this week 1 show. We appreciate you guys in the chat. Beavis says you guys flow great together. We're working on it for 4 years. The Gun and I absolutely love to bring the best conversation and the best analysis, picks, and hype. And speaking of hype, analysis, picks, and conversation, our next broadcast will be NFL Week 1, the opener, next Thursday night, Baltimore at Kansas City. For those of you guys who know, I'm more of an NFL guy. Guns is more of a college guy. We both love both sports, but for me, the NFL gets my juices flowing at even a higher level. And of course, we have an official play in that game. So guys, get ready for a great NFL campaign. We will be live every Thursday night at 7 o'clock and every Sunday morning with the Odds Fellow, our incredible three-way flow at 10 a.m. Top plays on this broadcast, West Virginia at noon, plus 8.5. Those kids probably will stay up all night partying tonight in Morgantown. As I said, it is a notorious spot. The place is absolutely raucous in the West Virginia hills, and this is going to be a tight one to open the campaign at noon. UMass in the bottom feeder bowl, minus 120 on the money line, and Texas A&M national game at 7:30, minus 2.5. The gun three top plays, 2 o'clock, South Dakota State in Stillwater, plus 9.5. Arizona late night special, Noah Fifita, part 2, big time player there, minus 29.5. And Wyoming, plus 7. We appreciate you guys watching the show. We know it's Friday night. People are getting off work. Sending you guys amazing vibes. Have a great weekend. Get some drinks. Get a workout. Let's dominate these plays. We will see you guys live next Thursday for NFL at 7 o'clock. Guns Picks, a pleasure as always. Close them out with some words, and let's dominate.
Yeah, I just want to clean up a few chat questions. So South Carolina versus Old Dominion. I don't have an opinion on this game. This is a pass for me. You think the same thing, Shark?
Yeah. This is just one of those games, not a lot of matchup data. Again, as I said when I talked about the UMass game is clearly very obscure, but they have played 3 years in a row. So there's actually a bit of a rivalry, and we have a lot of information within this matchup. This is just one of those flyer games in week 1. And ultimately in week 1, before we get to conference season, even weeks 2 and 3 to a degree, particularly with the restructuring of the conferences, there's just a lot of games we're seeing where teams really haven't played each other in a long time. So it's a bit of an exhibition, and we really want to find games where the motivation is clear and there is some data to actually analyze from seasons past. So I think it's probably a toss. Football Guy says no Canes Gators talk. We're going to miss it. Like Canes minus 2.5. We try to pick and choose our games to talk about, so we're not on here for 2 hours because obviously there is such a glut of games every Saturday. I thought that was a sharp number. Obviously, these teams haven't played at least in a few years, I believe. The Gators have played Florida State every year, but not Miami. Guns, anything on this?
Yeah, I do have an opinion on this one. This is a premium play on Dub Club, but these teams haven't played each other since 2020. I want to say 2020 or 2021. So this is a kind of a rebirth of this team. I would say I would lean low scoring on this one. The total is at 55-54 on this. And I think with the new offense with Miami, there's new weapons, new running back, new quarterback, new weapons on the wide receiver corps. Everybody's kind of highly inflated with this Miami team. I think everyone expects a lot of points on this one. I would probably lean towards the underside, but I do have an opinion on the side. Go check my Dub Club on that one. But man, the chat is rolling, and I appreciate you guys so much. She said, go Bolts, but all right, there we go. That's going to get me canceled. Canes highest paid college football team. Yeah, that's correct. With all the transfers coming here, I got to call out, shout out to my guy, Mikey M. Pimp Slap with the sports money. What up, fellas? Look at this crew. Go follow Sports Money with the content that's going on this channel. But that's going to do it. Unless you got something to add, Shark, I think that's going to do it here for the first week of college football knowledge for college with the Shark and the Gun. Please like and subscribe to both of our channels at Guns Picks and Sharky Waters Station. A lot of content coming off both channels. It's going to be an electric time here in college football season. We're going to make you guys a lot of money. And of course, NFL is going to be coming up on Thursday, like Shark alluded to. It's going to be a great time. We may have some special guests along the way. Who knows? Go check us out follow us on all social media platforms, especially on X at Guns Picks and at Sharks in Sports 88. Till next time, week 2, Knowledge for College, and Thursday, you get a special edition of the NFL. It's going to be electric time, so good luck with your plays. Let's cash some tickets. Let's dominate the board. And as always, let's keep dancing. Bye.